and had to kind of threaten him again to get the personnel file. So he subpoenas the personnel file. The attorneys at the school won't release it to him until I come down and sign off on it, and they use the HIPAA law because my son's a minor. His name is all over this. So I go in there, and the principal had a meeting with the teacher, the union rep, and the superintendent, and flat out asked him, did you ever offer Andrew money for sex? Did you want to make a sex video? And did you refer to his body part as my little guy?
Hey, we're back here at the podcast booth, and we have a very, very special guest. Michelle Peterson is here with us. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Can you just briefly introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Michelle Peterson. I live in Morris, Illinois. It's about 80 miles southwest of Chicago. And my son was the unfortunate victim of a grooming incident back in 2010 with a male teacher.
Okay.
So this teacher was texting him. I was not aware of this. I was one of those parents that would check their kids' phones intermittently throughout the week.
Yeah.
And my son knew that, so every time this teacher would text him, he would delete it. And he was 15, teacher was 34. My son turned 16 in June of that year, so this texting went on from May until October.
Yeah.
And I overheard a conversation late at night in October on a Sunday. And my son, I was getting ready for work and kind of going past his door, and he was very angry, and he said, I don't know how often you want me to call you. You know that I'm busy. I'm working 2 jobs. I'm taking a class in college. And he was a junior in high school, and so I thought he had a new girlfriend, right? And he's just annoyed that she's bothering him. And then all of a sudden I hear him say, I'll meet you in your classroom tomorrow and pick up those paintballs. It's like, what? So I knocked on the door, and I said, who are you talking to? And he told me. I said, you need to hang up the phone. And I said, it's completely inappropriate that he's calling you at 11 o'clock at night on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And then I asked him why he was calling him. He said, well, he was tired and driving home from watching Sunday Night Football with some friends. I'm like, again, why is he calling you?
Yes.
Yeah. So I went straight down to the computer, looked up the phone number that he was talking to, went to the text messages and found thousands of messages between the 2 numbers.
Whoa.
Printed off about 3 weeks worth, went to the principal the next day, and I said, I think we have a problem. And the principal sat back in his chair and just let out this exasperation. And he's like, I just gave him a teaching award 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
And you could tell that he knew something was really off, right?
Yeah.
And so he's like, I will meet with both of them today and find out what's going on. And he's like, I'll be here the rest of the day if you want to come back and meet with me. So I went back, and he said that they both denied any wrongdoing. And I said, so as a mandatory reporter, will you be reporting this to DCFS? He said, well, I have nothing to report because they're both denying wrongdoing. He's like, but you're Andrew's mom. You can file a DCFS report anytime you want. He told me 4 different ways in that conversation that I need to file a DCFS report. And he said if they need some place to meet, they can meet here in the conference room. We will arrange a place for them to meet. And so then I went home, and I started to try to find somebody who could pull these deleted messages off his cell phone. Found somebody after a couple of weeks who was a detective in Joliet, which is about 12 or 15 miles from where I live.
Okay.
And I had also filed a DCFS report, but also filed a police report. And so I had to turn the phone over to our detective for chain of custody to get it to this guy. So I let my son have his phone that weekend until Sunday night, and I told him, I need your phone. I found somebody who can get those messages off the phone. And his face just went green, and he wouldn't look at me. And I said, is there something you need to tell me? He's like, I can't tell you.
Oh, no.
And he said, I'll talk to the detective tomorrow and to the principal. So they met with him for 3 hours the next day. The principal came out, and he said, we'll be filing our own DCFS investigation.
Yeah.
You were spot on with what you were thinking. They put the teacher on paid administrative leave because until he's found guilty because of their contract, he can get paid.
Okay.
So he's on leave with benefits. And so they take the phone, and that detective had the phone for about 2 or 3 months. Couldn't get the messages off the phone because Apple had just done an upgrade. And so these carriers don't have to help them get the messages off the phone. Even with a subpoena, they'll drag their feet, even though it's my phone, right? So they wouldn't help. Yeah, so this is the next law I'm going to be working on, is making it so that these carriers have to help and turn these messages over. And so they then took the phone to the Illinois State Police. They had the phone for about another 6 months or so. So now we're almost a year after I overheard that conversation, and nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And so I met a Secret Service agent through a friend of mine. Her husband was a Secret Service agent. And he said, we need to introduce you to our friend. He's on a pedophile task force.
Okay.
And so for people who don't know this, the Secret Service will help local jurisdictions when they're not serving and protecting the president. And so he met with me. He said, Michelle, they just want you to go away. This isn't enough for just one kid. He's like, you need to stay on them. You get in there every week and you let them know that you're an educated woman, you're not going anywhere, and you keep fighting. And he's, I'm going to give you 2 business cards. You keep one for yourself, take one to the state's attorney, and tell them that if they don't have the messages off the phone in the next 7 days, you're going to turn it over to the feds. He's like, I'll have them off of there in 15 minutes. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So I did that the next day, and then we had the messages back 3 days later.
All right.
Right? Which
Whoa.
tells me they were probably sitting on those messages the whole time.
Yes.
So my husband and I, who is my son's stepfather, went to meet with 2 assistant state's attorneys in Grundy County, and we're sitting at a conference table in the middle of the courtroom, or the courthouse, and there was a stack of papers sitting in front of them, and they told me they just didn't think they had enough to go on. There were too many gaps in the transcripts. They couldn't get all the messages off the phone because when other messages come in, it'll push other messages out. And so there were big gaps in the transcripts. And I said, well, those are the messages sitting in front of you. And he said, yes. I said, can I see them? And they both looked at each other like, we weren't expecting that, right? I said, well, here's the thing. I said, those are my messages. It's my property. I'm going to leave today with that and my cell phone if you're doing nothing with them.
Yeah.
So they let me read the messages, and I'm flipping through this, and he had offered my son $500, then $1,000, then $1,500 for oral sex.
Oh my gosh.
Wanted to make a sex video with him.
Oh my gosh.
Would refer to his body part as my little guy, ask if he was ever going to get to see the little guy.
Yeah.
And then there were other lewd and lascivious things in there, right? And my son kept telling him no, kept telling him to leave him alone.
Yeah.
There'd be 10 or 20 messages coming in. My son wouldn't respond back. And then he felt like he had to respond back at this point because this guy's in a position of authority. And up until this point, I'd been pretty compliant, pretty even-keeled, frustrated, but not really losing my cool. And I pushed the messages back very slowly and slammed my hands on the table, and I stood up and I said, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And I looked at the older guys. You have grandkids that go to this school, and the younger guy, you have children that will be going to this school. You guys are okay with this guy teaching your kids? And they're like, ma'am, you need to calm down. I said, I do not need to calm down. You guys need to do your jobs.
Yes.
And I was livid. And so, I made this up because this is what you look like when you fight for your kids. It's not that mama bear with the little cub following afterward. This is what you end up looking like. And my husband was even kicking me under the table, trying to get me to calm down. Like, you kick me one more time, I'm kicking you out that door. Like, these 3 men didn't know what to do with me at this point. They're like, oh my God, we've awakened a beast, right?
Oh, yeah.
So then I said I wanted to meet with the actual state's attorney. Well, of course, he was busy. So I called back at 8:01 the next morning, and I said, I need to meet with the state's attorney, told him who I was, and they said, well, he doesn't have any time in his schedule today. I said, that's fine. I'm coming down, picking up all of my stuff. I'm going to take it to the Illinois state's attorney because she was working on some trafficking stuff at the time. I said, I'm going to take it to her office. I got a call back from the actual state's attorney 15 minutes later. He said he would meet with me that afternoon.
Okay.
I had printed off an article where he said he came back to Grundy County to protect the children and families of Grundy County. So I took that with me. And when I went in there, he said he wasn't very familiar with my case. I'm like, we're almost a year into this case. You have no idea what's going on with this. I'm like, that's a problem. I said, we are in the county seat, so the school is only 10 minutes from the courthouse. You went to this high school and you have no idea what's going on. So I said
this was a year down the line?
Yeah, because they had his phone for so long, right? So after I overheard that conversation, they had his phone for about 2 or 3 months and about another 6 months. So we're looking at almost a year, I would say at least 10 or 11 months after I overheard that conversation, and nothing has happened to this guy, and he's still getting paid.
Wow.
And so I set the article down. I said, you said you came back to Grundy County to protect the children and families of Grundy County. How about we start doing that?
Yes.
And we were nose to nose at one point, and I was so angry, and so that set off not a good relationship between the two of us. But I said, I understand too that you're sitting on subpoenas for 4 other abuse cases that the police have been waiting for months. I said, what are you doing? You have no idea what's going on here. You're afraid to prosecute anybody. I'm like, can you please start doing your job? I said, I feel like I'm stuck with you guys as my attorney, and that's exactly what this feels like. I'm like, I pay my taxes. Do your jobs, right? I get a call from the detective the next day who is a friend of ours as well, and he said, so what did you say to him yesterday? So I told him, he's like, we just got 4 subpoenas we've been waiting for.
Whoa.
And I said, well, glad I could help you with your cases, but I'm not getting anywhere with mine yet.
Wow.
And so nothing happens. A couple months go by, and I get a call from the principal. He's like, I really need to talk to you. So I come down there, and I made a joke because I've never been called to the principal's office so much in my entire life, right? And I don't know how any of this stuff works, and I'm at their mercy, And so he said, I've been trying to get them to subpoena his personnel file, and they won't do it. So I go back down to the state's attorney's office, and can you get his personnel file? And I waited in the waiting room for almost 2 hours. I think he thought I would just leave.
Yeah.
But, 4:30 is starting to roll around. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere until I meet with him. And I said, can you please get the personnel file and subpoena that? He's like, what could possibly be in there that we would need? I'm like, what skin is it off of your back? Can you just get it? And, had to kind of threaten him again to get the personnel file. So he subpoenas the personnel file. The attorneys at the school won't release it to him until I come down and sign off on it. And they use the HIPAA law because my son's a minor. His name is all over this. So I go in there, and the principal had a meeting with the teacher, the union rep, and the superintendent, and flat out asked him, did you ever offer Andrew money for sex? Did you want to make a sex video? And did you refer to his body part as my little guy? And he said he put his head down, shook his head in affirmation, and said yes. I'm like, we got him.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
Wow.
I give the principal a hug. I go back down to
He
the state's
admitted it,
attorney's
yeah.
office. And I told him what was in there. He's like, well, why'd they let you see it? I said, because of the HIPAA law. He's like, they didn't have to do that. I said, honestly, I think they let me see it because they knew once it got into your hands, if I hadn't known what was in there, I would have never known. And they knew how much trouble I was having down here with you doing your job. So I'm going to tell you right now, if he's not arrested in the next 7 days, I will have every major news station on your front lawn.
Yeah.
So he waited the full 7 days before he indicted him.
Okay.
And so he then gets indicted for solicitation of a minor. And we go to status hearing after status hearing. So these are monthly hearings, right? And where nothing is really happening. They're trying to make me look like I'm going after this teacher, right? That he's the victim. And I'm just getting so angry. And so nothing is really happening. And then we end up voting in a new state's attorney in November of 2012. He takes office in January of 2013.
Yeah.
And the detective said to him, there's this case that's been hanging out there for 2.5 years. You really need to work this case right away. And so he meets with me and my husband and my son. So my son now is 19, had just finished his first year of college.
Okay.
And he said, I think we're going to have to take a plea deal.
Okay.
And he's like, there's too many gaps in the transcripts. It's been 2.5 years. They're going to say that you can't possibly remember everything that in these messages that aren't there. And I was livid. I was like, we went through all of this, and like we have everything in text messages. I just don't understand, right?
Yes, yes.
So we go to court in August of 2013. Now, God's hand was all over this from the very beginning because
Okay.
by the grace of God, this guy decides he wants to take it to trial.
Okay.
Now, that never happens.
Yeah.
Everybody was floored. They're like, what?
Yeah.
So then the judge lights up his attorney and says, you have dragged this family through the mud for
Yes.
2.5 years. We could have gone to court this summer while this young man was home from school. Now we got to bring him home from school in the middle of the semester for trial in October, and lays into the attorney and the teacher. The attorney says, I have a prepaid vacation the week before that. I don't think I'll be ready to go to trial that Monday.
Yeah.
And he said, you've had 2.5 years to get ready for trial.
Yeah.
We're going
Right.
to trial on Monday, so you better be ready.
That's right.
So we end up going to trial. They had my son on the stand for about 4 hours between both sides. The defense put me on as a witness to keep me out of the courtroom.
Okay.
And so I had to sit in this room off to the side, not knowing what was going on the
man.
whole time, right?
Oh, no.
And but the good part of that is when my son was done testifying, he had to come sit in the same room with me with no phone and no
Okay.
TV. So we played cards, we played board games, we
Okay.
talked. So I
Yeah.
said, please give that attorney my thank you because I just got time with my 19-year-old son that I would have never had otherwise.
Yeah.
And so we end up getting the very first grooming conviction in the United States.
Wow.
So,
Amen.
yeah, so he was convicted of unlawful grooming and then solicitation of a minor.
Wow.
Yep. The unfortunate part of that is he only did 30 days in jail,
Oh, no. Wow.
paid a $2,700 fine, had to register as a sex offender for only 10 years. So
Okay.
as of last May, he's no longer on the sex offender registry,
Wow.
Okay.
but he can never teach again. So that was the
Okay.
main goal.
That's good, at least.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. So, and then my son, unfortunately, felt guilty. Like he felt like he cost this guy his job. He felt
Oh,
like,
no.
right, because when these groomers are good, that's what they do. They make them feel bad
Yeah.
for them, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
the
their
entire community, the school, they couldn't believe it. Like they had no idea that they were being groomed by this guy.
Yeah.
And that's what people need to understand. They don't just groom the victim, they groom the family, they groom the community
Yes.
because they don't want them to come after them, right? So they try to make it look like they're the good guy, that they would never possibly do this.
Yeah.
And I'm a physical therapist. I was in this guy's house treating his family member for home health physical therapy.
Oh, no.
I was also coaching softball at the same high school where he was coaching. So he knew me as a parent. as a healthcare provider and as a colleague.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I think I always tease that he had the right kid, he just had the wrong family. My
Yeah.
son's very kind-hearted, he's a good person, right? He
Yeah.
felt bad for the guy. And I was a single parent for a long time. I was remarried when he started doing this, but they target those households, right?
Yeah.
And my son was being bullied on the baseball team, so he turned to this coach for some help.
Yes.
And that was his in.
right.
That's when
I
that's when
see.
he started texting him then, right? And then started
Uh-huh.
texting him all these other things. So my son, was in and out of counseling, and he just turned 31 a few weeks ago.
Okay.
And he has told me, he's like, I would have told you had you not overheard that conversation, because
Yeah.
he just wanted it to go away.
Yes.
And I got him to understand that it was no longer about us anymore. God put this in our laps for a reason, and we needed to take care of it. Right?
Yeah.
So fast forward 10 years, I go to a Reawaken in Nashville, Tennessee. I meet a trafficking investigator named Amy Coelho.
Okay.
She starts telling me about a case she just finished on. Took her 10 years to get this guy. And it was a church cult where the women in the church prepared the kids in the church for the men in the church.
Wow.
So it's the La Luz del Mundo church. And they busted 23 different sex trafficking cells between Mexico and California.
Okay.
And then she told me about Larry Nasser Gymnast was one of their clients, and told me about other cases. And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell her about my measly little case in Illinois, right? So I start to tell her, and she's like, hold on, are you from Illinois? And I said, yes. She goes, when was that? I said, 2013. He was sentenced in January of 2014. And she gets tears in her eyes and grabs my arm. She goes, I need to get a picture with you and send this to my team. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And she
yeah,
goes, we
yeah.
use your case for every trafficking case we bust, including the
Come
ones I just
on.
told you about,
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
have the only grooming conviction in the United States, and we
That's
have
right.
to prove the grooming in order to prove the trafficking. And so then I told her the whole sordid story, and then some on top of what I told you. But our house was so tumultuous. It was horrible. And she's like, I'm going to tell you right now, your tenacity and your son's willingness to come forward, you guys have saved thousands of lives.
Wow,
So we were
that's
both
amazing.
crying.
Amen.
People around us were like, what is
Amen.
happening? Like, we're
Yeah.
bawling,
Yeah.
And so she said, I said, so if you guys are using this for all your cases, she goes, no. Everybody in the United States is using your case because there is no other case.
Wow.
I said, so if that's true, could they have used this for the Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein trials?
Right.
And she said, I'd have to look at the case file, because she's also a paralegal. She goes, but they would have nothing else to use. They would have had to have used this.
Wow.
So to even think that we might have had a hand in that is just surreal, right? And just
Right.
unbelievable.
Right.
So I'd already become acquainted with General Flynn. He'd been to our church a couple times. I'd gone to the Reawakens and become
Yeah.
very familiar with him. And so I told him my story. He's like, you need to meet my sister, Mary Flynn O'Neill. So I get introduced to Mary with America's Future. She introduces me to a paralegal out of Florida, Allie Hopper. And what we wanted to do, and Amy said, we need to get a law put in place whereby somebody somebody charged with grooming cannot take a plea bargain.
Okay.
She thought that's why we had the only grooming conviction, because these other people are taking plea bargains and pleading out. And we soon found out, when Allie started looking in the criminal code, Florida didn't have a grooming law. Neither did any other state. Illinois was the only state that had a grooming law in place.
Wow.
So now I've made it my personal mission to get a grooming law put in place in all 50 states
Amen.
by the grace of God. And God is opening so many doors. And so Allie worked very hard in Florida, knocking on doors in Tallahassee with a group of her friends. They got a rep and a senator to sponsor the bill. I went
Right.
down and spoke at a GOP meeting. One of the senators pulled me aside and wanted me to tell him the whole story, and he was in.
Okay.
So we got a grooming law passed in Florida last April, signed by
Awesome.
the governor, by Governor DeSantis.
Awesome.
Started working with another rep out of Iowa, Mark Thompson, that I met through another mama bear, Michelle Peterson, who was instrumental in getting the masks off the kids in Iowa during COVID. So she introduced me to Mark. Now Iowa has a grooming law in place. Arizona then had an issue, got a hold of Iowa and Florida's law and Illinois' law. They now have a law in place. And so it's starting to take kind of a life of its own.
Wow.
Another mom had been working in Georgia for 3 years trying to get a law put in place there. After these laws fell,
Yeah.
that law then went through. So last year it was Florida, Iowa, Arizona, Georgia. Now this year, there is an app that people can get. It's called a Bark app.
Okay.
And so you can get messages in and out of your kids' phones onto your phone. They also have a Bark phone, which has a constant GPS on it. And they also have a watch that you can use through Bark. But you can set it up so that these kids can only text or call parents, grandparents, certain friends. You have control over what apps they can put on their phone. Also, you can shut down the timing on there, so you have complete control of their phone.
good.
Plus, messages that go in and out of their phones can come onto your phone. But you can set up for certain keywords, body parts, cuss words, that sort of thing,
okay.
slang, right? So that
Gotcha,
only
yeah.
those messages come in.
Yeah.
So my cousin, who lives in Montana, was in the Navy when we were going through all of this, had no idea what we went through. She listened to a podcast I did, bought a Bark phone for her 13-year-old daughter, she got an alert that somebody was messaging her daughter through Snapchat.
Yes.
Found out that it was somebody who was in Iowa.
Okay.
But I told her, I said, take your phone to the police, right? And so
Right.
to her local police. Well, they just essentially told her she needed to be a better parent.
Oh my God.
And so I said, take it to your local sheriff. So she did that. Same response. I said, take it to
okay.
your local FBI. So that guy had been trained by ICAC, which is Internet Crimes Against Children. He took the phone. I said, go get the Chromebook from her school as well, because they just finished school. I said, before they wipe it, take it to him, see if he's messaging her on the Chromebook, which he was.
Wow.
And so after that happened, I said, you need to get a rep or a senator in Montana to sponsor this bill and make it law. Tell her, tell them about your story, send them to my website. Her boyfriend, just so happens, this is God again, his cousin is a rep in Montana.
Okay.
Just had a baby.
All
the
right.
hormones raging, right?
Yeah.
I said, go tell
Yeah.
her your story, send her to my website. So she wasn't on the right committee. She was a Democrat rep, turned it
Okay.
over to the other side of the aisle to a Republican rep who was on that committee.
Okay.
And they put a bill into play, and it got passed bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate, 100%. So just put into law 2 months ago
Yes.
in Montana. And the Montana law needs to be model legislation for the entire country.
Yes.
So somebody who's 18 years of age or older grooms a child 12 years of age or younger, it's 100 years in prison.
Wow.
No
Nice.
chance of parole for the first 25. If they get out at 25, it's lifelong satellite surveillance.
All right.
And if it's 16 years of age or younger, it could be 4 to 100 years.
Okay.
Same thing applies, lifelong satellite surveillance. So that needs to be model legislation. I just spoke last week at the Wyoming Children's Symposium,
Yeah.
actually this last Wednesday, and they told me that there's a rep already drafting a bill based on the Montana law in Wyoming. So this
Okay.
is all starting to flow through now. But what I'm looking for is somebody who knows a state rep or senator on a personal basis. They can text or make a phone call to, send them to my website, which is just my name, michellepeterson.org, and it's
Okay.
O-N. And at the top, there are tabs that says Andrew's Law.
Okay.
And in there, it has all of the laws that have already gone into place. It has our conviction on there.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do, Andrew's Law will actually be the amendment that we're trying to push through in Illinois, which would make it so somebody who is charged with or convicted of, charged with grooming and or trafficking, that they
Okay.
cannot take a plea deal. Also increase the sex offender registry to include places of businesses that are privately owned. Dave & Buster's, Chuck E. Cheese, those places are not on the sex offender registry. So these
Okay.
places, they can go into those places, and those are like playgrounds for these guys,
Right,
right?
right.
Because those places didn't exist when this law was written.
I see.
And we also want to expand it so that it's a lifelong sex offender registration for anybody convicted of grooming.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on, and what I'm working on, and trying to get this put in place in all 50 states.
Okay, come on. We're behind that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Michelle's
So-
getting it done.
Yes, well, God is getting it done, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So all these doors are finally starting to open, and we were hopeful that once certain states started getting these laws in place, that other states would just start to follow suit. And there's also a grooming law now in Louisiana based off the laws that we've already put through. There were 2 guys that just came out a few months ago, and they were being groomed and molested by a priest in Louisiana.
Oh, my gosh.
And they put a grooming law in place now in Louisiana that just became effective 2 weeks ago.
Amen.
So, yeah, we need to stop this before they actually defile these kids.
Yes.
Stop it before it starts, and then we wouldn't need a house or a home for these kids who
Right.
need to heal, right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you just stop it before it starts, that's the whole goal.
And while you were telling your story, that's what I was thinking. I was like, wow, if there was laws to help put these guys away from the vicinity of children,
Yes.
there wouldn't be the abuse.
Right.
And that's amazing.
Right.
Preventative measures.
Right. And
Yeah.
I would love to see this go international, because
Yeah.
all of it starts with grooming, even in home country, right? So they
Yeah.
groom the families. We'll take your kids to America, give them a better life. They
Yeah.
give them $500, take their kids, and then they traffic their kids all along the way, and then traffic them once they get here.
Yes.
So it needs to be an international grooming law too. So
That's
we're
right.
working on that.
Yeah.
Wow, Michelle, that's amazing. God has called you to something
Yes.
Yeah.
pretty great.
Yes. And that's the thing. I mean, even the worst of times, God can make beauty from ashes, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what we need to, take solace in, is that some good things can come out of, bad things that happen to you.
Yeah.
He walks you through it and then opens doors to make things happen for His glory. So,
That's right.
yeah.
I'm so glad that you're here with us at the Rev 17 conference, because this is perfect. All stages of helping children not, face this kind of trauma, all hands on deck, right?
Right.
So, wow. Thank you for,
Yes.
talking to us. It's just amazing.
I want to ask,
yeah.
I'm all into the our oldest is 12.
Yeah.
And so, I talk with other moms about what we can do, about screen time and apps, and, our son doesn't have a phone. And so what would you say is the best thing that we can do for our kids, young teens and stuff, where they can be protected? Because, your son's a nice boy, nice young man.
Right.
And you're a good mother.
Right.
So what can we do to try to stay
I would say make sure you have open communication with them.
Okay.
While the phones, open up the world to them.
Yes.
It opens up the world to them.
Yes.
Right? So it works both ways. And look on these gaming systems. I mean, you don't have to have a phone for these pedophiles to get to
That's
them, right?
true.
So they're playing these games with people they don't even know. So you need to make sure that they're not giving any information, no name, no age, no. Don't tell them where they go to school. Make sure that they don't give out an address. Like, these kids just trust the people on the other end that they're actually the 12-year-old kid that they're playing with, right? When it's actually a 54-year-old pedophile,
Yeah.
right? And they don't know that. And they're like, "Oh, Mom, but he has a kid's voice, right?" Well, they don't know that they have voice modulators they can use, right?
Yes, that's
so,
right.
And you don't see their face, so
Right,
they have
right.
no idea who's on the other end of that gaming system. So make sure you, just let them know that they shouldn't give any personal information out on those gaming systems. I think
Right.
that's really important. Having open conversations with them about what can happen to them, and about this whole sexual identity thing that's going on, and these
Definitely.
books that are in the
Definitely.
schools, Gays Against Groomers are in 100% support of this bill.
Oh, good.
We had
Thank
issues
God.
in Florida where the LGBTQ community was coming out saying, "Oh, you're coming after us." No, we're not. We want to save your children too.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
You don't want
right.
your kids molested by these
That's right.
pedophiles, right?
Yeah.
So Gays Against Groomers came out and they actually gave us support and did a whole video for us supporting the law in Florida. So I think those are really important conversations, and knowing what books that they're reading in school, knowing what books they have in the library, what books they're promoting. I don't know if you watched Senator Kennedy from Louisiana. He actually read Genderqueer in a Senate hearing.
Oh, he did.
And
Oh, I
everybody
didn't
was
know.
like, what? Like, yes,
Yeah.
these are in your schools, right?
Yes,
And when you
absolutely.
start talking about this stuff with kids, it desensitizes them to this, right? So then when they start talking to them about having sex with them, it's not so weird.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
that's what people need to understand, is that those conversations should be had with the parents and the parents only, not with these teachers, not in any other venue other than in your home, and how you want to approach that with these kids. So if you have that conversation with your children, be open and honest with them, and just let them know that they can come to you with anything, And the other thing too is, we have all these kids that are sending sexting pictures, right?
Yeah, they are.
And
yeah.
then the person on the other end is, trying to get money from them, saying, "We're going to send these pictures out to all of your friends. We're going to send it to your family unless you give us $500."
Right.
Right. And then they end up, there's a lot of kids that are committing over that. So even having that conversation about with your kids, it's so important.
Yeah.
That nothing is ever worth taking your life over, because that's permanent.
That's right.
And making sure you have those are tough conversations to have with your children. I mean, that's the one time, like, I can talk about this stuff usually about 90% of the time and never break. And then when I talk about when I had that conversation with my son, sometimes it'll just get to me and I'm like, oh, I'm like, okay, stop crying, right?
Yeah.
And just get through this. But these are real things that happened in our lives, and we're just a normal everyday family. People never think it's going to happen to them.
Right.
And it does. Like,
It does.
the devil is everywhere.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah, we just have to stay on it and have those conversations with your kids.
Yeah, we totally agree. That's great advice. So
Yeah.
we're out of time, but Michelle, can you tell the audience where to reach you?
Yes. So my website is the best place. It's michellepeterson.org.
Okay.
Again, it's Michelle with two L's and Peterson is O-N. So
Okay.
michellepeterson.org. And again, on my website, there's a contact page on there. That email goes directly to me. And then there's also a donate page on there. I do all of this out of my own
Yeah.
my own pocket. And then there's also a link, there's an affiliate link on my page for the Bark app and for the
Okay.
Bark phone.
Nice.
So
Okay,
full transparency, if you go onto my website and use the link there, I do get some proceeds
Good.
from that for talking about
Good.
them, so that it helps with what I'm doing. So yeah, if you can just go to my website and you can contact me through there, and you can follow me on X too. It's at the bottom of my page. I have a hard time. I think it's Michelle Pete
Okay.
77
Okay.
on X. So
I'll look for you.
Yeah.
Add
Yeah.
me. I'm the banned pastor, because I've been banned from every social media except X.
Good.
Yes.
Good. That's awesome.
Cool. Well, thank you again. It's a
Yes,
pleasure.
thank you.
Great work. We're going to keep promoting this. Let's
Thank
make it
you.
happen all 50 states.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.